So we just recently got some news that Fluffy Hernandez is injured and he is out of his fight with Reinier and Brendan Allen will be stepping in to fight RDR at UFC Vancouver. What a bummer, man. What a bummer, and what an absolute drop-off in excitement for RDR's next fight, because we all know Dana White went on. He announced RDR versus Fluffy Hernandez after Fluffy absolutely destroyed Roman Dolidze, to where he basically said, we're going to see how this whole thing plays out. And he was talking about, how does Nasruddin Imavov versus Bahalio play out? Basically, like, if someone's got to show me something in that fight to get the next title fight. And then it was kind of laying in the background of RDR versus Fluffy, man, right? Those guys stylistically, that's an interesting fight against Khamzat Chimaev, right? So we said, we're going to see how this whole thing plays out. There's nothing to see now, because it is very clear that, he should be the guy fighting for the title anyway, because he has earned it. Nasruddin Imavov versus Khamzat Chimaev, that is the next fight in the middleweight division, because now that Fluffy pulled out, you just can't give RDR a title shot off of a win against Brendan Allen. Again, not RDR's fault here, right? He was preparing for Fluffy Hernandez. What an absolute bummer this is, man. This was one of the most highly anticipated fights for me the rest of the year the moment it got announced, because stylistically, it just doesn't get much more intriguing than RDR versus Fluffy Hernandez. So unfortunately, we are not getting that fight anymore. Brendan Allen is stepping in, so I will break down the fight, give my early prediction, because we're getting close here, right? We're about a month out, but there's more that we got to discuss as well, because we got to discuss, the new fight here, but also the fact that Paulo Costa, his name was kind of getting thrown around as a possible guy that could step in against Fluffy Hernandez. And then, as usual, Costa playing his clown type of games, right? So we'll discuss that. I'll give my thoughts there. But then again, we got Ilia Topuria kind of in the headlines, right? Because Terrence Crawford just went out there and fought Canelo Alvarez. He got the victory, and Ilia was kind of setting the stage leading up to the boxing match between Canelo and Crawford, chirping a little bit about Bud, then Bud kind of chirped back on Ariel Helwani's show, so I'll give my thoughts and takes on that. And then again, Movsar Evloev hopping on X, kind of giving his thoughts on Diego Lopez going out there and beating Jean Silva. And what I love about Evloev, he is the definition of any time, any place. He's willing to basically take on anybody, and I'll discuss what I would like to see next for Movsar Evloev. So we got a lot to discuss in this video. Let's not waste any more time and talk about our new main event at UFC Vancouver. I don't want to sit up here and just talk about my disappointment the whole time, but that's kind of how I feel, man. Like, this has no excitement to me for this main event at all, right? Fluffy versus RDR, like, that was the fight, dude. That was the fight. It was absolutely the fight. And the reason that it was the fight is because we had it kind of in our mind, like, okay, if the UFC, if they are going to screw over Imavov, well, they're certainly going to give Khamzat Chimaev a very interesting stylistic puzzle in RDR or Fluffy Hernandez, which those, in my opinion, are the only two guys that stand any bit of a chance when it comes to the grappling against Chimaev. I still don't think that they do, but that's kind of how I think a lot of fans were looking at that fight. And then now we have Brendan Allen stepping in here, who, by the way, Nasruddin Imavov beat the brakes off of Brendan Allen. But to be fair, Brendan Allen had a good first round against Imavov, was able to take him down, was able to control him. But Allen's coming off of I don't even want to say a nice victory, a decent victory over Marvin Vettori back at UFC 318. And I think that might have gotten fight of the night. I don't remember off the top of my head, but that was a competitive fight. It was a good fight. There were some good back and forths, and Brendan Allen's one of those guys where he's kind of just been up and down in this division. He can kind of beat the middle of the road guys. Then when you throw him in there against kind of the top five, he just can't get it done. And now, yeah, props to him for stepping in here, so that way we still get to have RDR fight, because, by the way, RDR is looking to secure his fourth victory in 2025 here. So this guy has been active. He has been on the hunt in the middleweight division. So maybe the UFC sits back and they're like, look, it's not his fault that Fluffy pulled out. He's going to get a big win here over Brendan Allen. Maybe they try to slide him in for the shot. That would be crazy in my opinion. Again, I could see the UFC doing it if RDR were to beat Fluffy, but now it is very, very clear that Imavov is the guy, which he should have been the guy. I've said that before, but I'm saying from the business angle, I could have seen the UFC stylistically looking to give RDR or Fluffy the shot against Khamzat next. So now this essentially becomes RDR going out here, kind of staying busy here, adding another win, getting some more octagon time because he's probably going to have to fight somebody else before getting a crack at the title. And who knows, maybe we get the RDR versus Allen fight back on the books, but the bottom line is RDR should run right through Brendan Allen. Now, I believe that these guys have probably crossed paths over at Killcliff FC because RDR's been over there getting some work in, I believe, with Henry Hooft. And we know that Brendan Allen trains there. So I think that there's some familiarity here between the two guys. But the bottom line is RDR is a serious issue in this weight class, man. And he clearly showed that by going out there and getting the victory over Robert Whittaker, which, by the way, that was a massive step up in competition for RDR. I picked him to win the fight because RDR presents a number of challenges for guys in this middleweight division, right? Like I said, I think Hamzat could have his way with RDR, but outside of that, everyone else is going to have a very hard time with DeRitter. He is very physically strong. He's a tall guy. He's rangy. He's super goofy and awkward in there. And he has an elite ground game when it comes to the jiu-jitsu. He's got good judo. He can take you down up against the fence, take you down with a nice single leg out in space. And he's kind of a tricky guy to deal with, right? Because you don't really respect his striking a whole lot. And then that jab starts to add up, right? He was busting Robert Whittaker up with that jab nicely. And outside of getting dropped by Robert Whittaker, that was a big mistake where Ritter was kind of spamming that knee, which is his best weapon. And then he just got caught by a big right hand by Robert Whittaker. But outside of that, he was fighting a really, really good fight against Robert Whittaker. And so he's going out there and getting a decision victory over a guy like Robert Whittaker who beats Brendan Allen. And now we're sitting here supposed to act like, oh, Brendan Allen has his chance here against RDR. I'm just not buying into it. People don't sleep on Brendan Allen, man. Well, I'm sleeping on him. I'm absolutely sleeping on Brendan Allen in this matchup. I don't think he stands much of a chance here. Brendan Allen on the feet, is he better than RDR? I mean, technically, he does things a little bit better on the feet, but he's not particularly better than RDR on the feet. Now, Allen's got maybe better boxing, better kicks, right? Those kinds of things I can understand where you're coming from, but that knee is the great equalizer here. That knee of RDR is hellacious, man. That thing that he throws to the body, and what is Brendan Allen going to want to do in this fight? He's going to want to grapple. He's going to try to get a hold of RDR, which I think he's going to try to avoid that in this fight because RDR has an advantage there. That's Brendan Allen's game. Take guys down, work his ground game, get to his submissions. He's not going to be able to do that in this fight. RDR wins this thing all day long. I think he can outstrike him on the feet with the jab. He'll throw that knee. I think he can take Allen down, control him on the ground. Maybe it cancels out and it ends up just being a back and forth striking battle for 25 minutes. I just don't see it that way. I think RDR has clearly shown that this guy is for real in this weight class, man. And I know that Allen, he's shown that he's pretty good, right? And his striking, I think, is underrated, and people don't give him enough credit for his striking, but, that's kind of his only hope here is to be able to outstrike Reinier DeRitter, and I just see RDR bullying him around, man. He's a big guy in this weight class. That knee is nasty. I see him landing that to the body, battering Brendan Allen, pushing him up against the fence, landing some gritty shots on the inside, and just absolutely working Brendan Allen, and I think he submits him. Early lean here, I think RDR submits Brendan Allen as the fight plays out. I think he's able to get him down, and if Brendan Allen does try to grapple in this fight, he's not going to out-grapple RDR, and even if RDR is on bottom, he will find a way to reverse, get on top, and if he gets on top of Brendan Allen, it is absolutely going to be a wrap in this fight. So props to Brendan Allen for stepping in here, and again, props to RDR for still being like, next man up, I'll take a fight here with Brendan Allen because, what does RDR really have to gain here, right? Because I don't see the UFC giving him some sort of title shot off of a win over the number 11 ranked Brendan Allen, who's coming off of a win over Marvin Vettori, right? And then before, he was out there losing to Imavov, right? And again, he had a good first round against Imavov, right? But I'm sleeping on Brendan Allen in this fight. People are like, don't sleep on Allen. I am. He's not beating RDR, man. He's just not. RDR's on a roll. He's an absolute monster, and you're going to need something special to go out there and beat this guy. That is very clear at this point. Robert Whittaker is way better than Brendan Allen, and look what RDR was able to do. And that was without the grappling success, really, from RDR in that fight. He was able to land good shots on Whittaker, right? And Robert Whittaker's a way better striker than Brendan Allen. I get it. Styles make fights. What's Allen going to do here? Try to grapple with RDR? RDR's a better grappler. He is. His jiu-jitsu's outstanding. It's probably better than Brendan Allen's, I'd say. He's bigger. He's stronger. He'll batter him in the clinch. That knee, I'm telling you, the knee is the thing to watch, man. It's the thing to watch. And I just see him punishing the midsection of Allen, wearing him down, getting into a half-guard position, finding an arm triangle or something, and getting him out of there. I think RDR goes out there and puts on a statement performance in Vancouver and takes out Brendan Allen. But unfortunately for RDR, like, not his fault that Fluffy pulled out, but I feel like the UFC is going to put him in probably a number one contender fight next in order to get a title shot. So props to RDR, man. This would be 4 wins in a row in 2025 for RDR. He's climbing the rankings fast, man, and he is a super dangerous guy in the middleweight division. I think he absolutely walks through Brendan Allen. Next, this is basically what Ali Abdulaziz was saying, right? He basically said RDR was supposed to fight Hernandez, but Hernandez got hurt, wishing him a speedy recovery. RDR got offered Costa, and he accepted after the UFC told us it's not a go. Brendan Allen has now accepted, or has now stepped up, and this is the new main event for 10/18 in Vancouver, right? So we broke down the fight, but I wanted to show you this from Ali here because he kind of aired out Paulo Costa to a degree here, and that's what I want to discuss here because this would have been a way more interesting fight, in my opinion, between Paulo Costa and Reinier de Ridder. Because say what you want about Paulo Costa, right? We can say that he's a clown, all these different things, and you're going to show up, Paulo, you're going to show up, because it just feels like you can't ever really count on Costa. But what we do know is every time Paulo Costa does show up, his fights are usually incredibly entertaining. And not only that, he is known for having pretty good takedown defense, right? And he is a very strong guy inside the middleweight division to where stylistically, this would have been a very fun fight and this would have been a much more intriguing fight, dude. Like, people were looking forward to RDR versus Fluffy, and now we got Brendan Allen. Like, it's just stylistically, it's kind of interesting, but it doesn't have any kind of steam to it. Paulo Costa, that would have brought the steam. But Paulo Costa reveals he was offered to step in and fight RDR. To be fair, I proposed 3 rounds due to short time, and guess what? He said no for 3 rounds. UFC agreed to 3 rounds, but he didn't. Now, I'm not so sure that the UFC agreed to this being 3 rounds, right? Because this is a scheduled 5-round main event headlining a fight night card in Vancouver, so I'm not so sure about that from Costa there. But the bottom line is this. What a joke of Paulo Costa to be like, oh, well, it's going to be on a shorter notice, so I want it to be 3 rounds. This is a main event, dude. And if you take an opportunity like this to go out there against a guy that is streaking right now in the division, who people are talking about possibly fighting for the title soon, that would be the biggest win of Paulo Costa's career, probably beating a guy like RDR, would it not? It absolutely would. And he just, credit to Costa because he's coming off of an incredible victory over Roman Kopylov, where a lot of people wrote him off. I did. I thought the Kopylov would be able to go out there stylistically. Costa likes to stand and bang. He's getting tagged by an old Luke Rockhold, going life and death with him to a degree. Roman Kopylov should have the answers, but Kopylov looked like a deer in headlights. And part of that was because Costa was just beating him up, timing him with that right hand. And we've clearly seen when Paulo Costa is on, he's a fun guy to watch, man. He absolutely is. But to request 3 rounds, we see fighters step in on short notice for main events and 5-rounders all the time, and they don't say shit like this. So just, this is what we talk about with Paulo Costa, man, right? People criticize this guy for being a clown, right? And I have before, right? Because, now granted, Costa's not always the reason that his fights are off or whatever. A lot of the times we've seen the UFC moves his fights to different cards or whatever. So it's not always on Costa, but a lot of the time you just can't trust Costa, right? And we know that he cuts a lot of weight, right? And he's had injuries here, pulled out of the Hamza fight. It just is always something with Paulo Costa, man. And what makes him a clown, what makes him look foolish is you're saying all these different things. You beat a guy in Roman Kopylov, and then you're basically calling for a title shot. You want to fight Hamza Chimaev because you guys have some beef, which, yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want to see that fight, man? I mean, style, the build-up, it would be entertaining, all those kinds of things, but you haven't earned a title shot. Costa, literally, his only win in the UFC right now over someone, so he beat Roman Kopylov. That is his only win over someone currently on the roster in the middleweight division. And he was parading around on Ariel Helwani's show talking about he should be next for a title shot. And now you don't want to step in here against Reinier de Ridder when you had the opportunity. Now, I get it. It's shorter notice. Not a lot of fighters like to do that. But if you're Costa, you take this fight, you go out there and you're able to pull it off against RDR, Costa, in my opinion, if he took this fight, went out there and beat RDR and called for a title shot, given the beef that he has with Chimaev, I could have seen the UFC looking to pull the trigger on that and make that happen. I'm not saying, because like I said, Imavov has earned that, but listen, you're Costa, you're like, I deserve a title shot. No, you don't. But if you take a short notice fight and you go out there and do something impressive against RDR, I mean, now you have a stronger case. I still don't think that you would get the shot, but now you got a stronger case. And that'd be a big win, be the biggest win of his career for sure. And what a fun fight it would be. right? So stylistically, this would have been a great fight. And like I said, this would have saved the UFC Vancouver card. But now we got Brendan Allen stepping in. Like I said, props to Allen for doing it. And props to RDR for just being game to fight anybody. RDR doesn't care. He's like, I'll fight Costa, I'll fight whoever. But to ask for 3 rounds because it's shorter notice, we've seen guys step in on shorter notice and make it happen in 5-round fights. So Paulo Costa, just, when people say this guy's a clown and a joke, it's things like this, man. It's things like this. You're calling for a title shot after beating Roman Kopylov. You want to fight Khamzat, and now you won't step in, and you're like, give me a 3-round fight in a main event. I mean, get the hell out of here. This was just a nice way of him just basically being like, yeah, I'm going to try to find a way to tick off the UFC to not make it happen. That's how, that, in my opinion, that's what it looks like to me. So what a disappointment here. Again, he was not scheduled to fight RDR, so I guess we can't be like, oh, well, shame on Costa here because he was not the one that pulled out of this fight. So asking a fighter to step on short notice, a lot of fighters don't want to do that. I think this was a missed opportunity by Paulo Costa. I really do. And he recognizes the threat of RDR, I feel. Right? So just a missed opportunity. For a guy that talks so much in Paulo Costa, he's hot and cold. He's pulling out of fights. It's always a disaster with this guy. To me, this was a huge opportunity that Paulo Costa basically blew. That's how I look at it. And I could be wrong, but I feel like the UFC is going to hold it against him. Right? So we'll see how this thing plays out, but how much better of a fight would it have been between RDR and Costa? It would have been a crazy fight, man. Absolutely crazy. Costa got good takedown defense from what we've seen. He's fun on the feet, loves to get into a scrap. That would have been a banger between these two. So maybe we get it one day, but I don't know. Just kind of a lousy thing here from Paulo Costa. Now, let's talk about Ilia Topuria and Bud Crawford. So, I think you guys have probably been following this online, right? There's just kind of been back and forths where Ilia Topuria leading into the Canelo-Bud fight. He was talking a lot about Crawford, and that's pretty much Ilia trying to kind of set something up for himself. That's part of it. But then again, it's gotten his name in the headlines, right? For a guy that hasn't been super active, especially since becoming the featherweight champion after beating Volkanovski, we have to wait a significant amount of time before we get to see Ilia Topuria fight again. So maybe this is one of those tactics where he's just talking, trying to get his name in the headlines, but to me, this is Ilia Topuria trying to actually get a boxing match with Bud Crawford, right? Because people are kind of back and forth. Oh, he's just talking, just trying to get his name out there. I think it's a little bit of both, but I really believe Ilia Topuria wants this opportunity. Why wouldn't he? He could go in there, make more money doing that probably than he has in his entire career. I mean, he would make so much money going over to boxing and doing this. The problem is he is not Conor McGregor when Conor McGregor crossed over to fight Floyd Mayweather in boxing. That's the reality. He's not. He's a big star, but he's not what McGregor was at that time. Right? And Bud Crawford's kind of big leaguing him, shutting him down, being like, who is that guy? I walked out to his walkout song. I don't know who this guy is. Bud Crawford saying Cody Garbrandt's the best boxer in the UFC, which is ludicrous, by the way. I don't know if he still thinks that the Garbrandt that fought Dominic Cruz, I think he thinks that fight happened about a month ago or something, not multiple years ago. But the bottom line is, you get my point. Ilia Topuria is doing this to get his name in the headlines. Obviously, daring to be great, wanting to go in there and take on an undefeated boxer who just beat Canelo. Topuria is a Canelo fan. We all know that. But, I mean, come on, man, right? We're really going down this route here. Just stop. Just stop, right? You say you're an MMA fan, but you don't even know who I am. Interesting. The first time we met, you told me good luck this week with your fight. Your memory fails you, and soon your chin will too. I'll represent the entire MMA community, pound for pound number one in real fights versus the pound for pound boxer. Now, would I hate a Ilia Topuria versus Bud Crawford boxing match? Not really, because at the end of the day, I've said before, Ilia Topuria, in my opinion, is the best boxer in the UFC, and if anyone was going to cross over into boxing and actually get a win, it would probably be Ilia Topuria, because I believe that he has the best fundamentals. He's got the power, he's got all those things, but the reality is, he ain't beating Bud Crawford. He's not beating Bud Crawford. Just stop, man. Like, it would be intriguing, right? Anytime we get a big name in the MMA, space that goes over in boxes, well, I guess the only time really was McGregor against Floyd. It was fun. But the bottom line is, this isn't that, man. It's just not. It's not. Right? And McGregor back in the day, he was super active, right? Especially on his run. It felt like he was fighting every other month. And Ilia Topuria, like, is this the UFC? Is this Ilia Topuria? Is it a little bit of both? Because it feels like I was looking at the calendar. I mean, he just went in there at 317, starched Charles Oliveira in the first round, basically took 0 damage, and we're probably not going to see this guy again this year. Who knows when we'll see him again next year, right? I get the Paramount deal, and I get it all, man. But we're heading down this route with Ilia Topuria that I'm not liking. I'm just not. right? And people were out there saying, like, Dean Thomas, it's going to be a disaster if Khamzat Chimaev wins the title. Okay, well, he just won the title at UFC 319, right? It sounds like maybe it's going to be him versus Imavov or somebody else probably early next year. And now we're sitting here and we have no idea when Ilia Topuria is going to fight again. After this guy just went in there and knocked somebody out in the very first round, taking like no damage. Right? Because look, he fought Volkanovski at 298. We had to wait till 308 to see him fight Holloway. Right? And I get that some of this, it's probably maybe a little him, the UFC. I don't know. But I'm not liking this, man. People talk about Islam Makhachev and some of these other guys being inactive. Ilia Topuria is an inactive champion. Now, whether that's his fault or the UFC's, we don't know. But I'm not liking this, man. That's the point that I'm trying to make is I don't like this. I don't like it. We got a guy in the prime of his career who's one of the biggest stars in the sport, who's always in a fun fight, man. Whether you are a fan of Ilia or not, this guy is unbelievably fun to watch, man. Unbelievably fun to watch. How could you not want to watch him fight? He knocks people out, talks a little trash, makes it fun. And then we're getting this inactive Ilia thing. I don't like this, man. And now you're talking about boxing Bud Crawford. Is this a way for him to kind of create some urgency to the UFC to be like, because Dana basically shut this down pretty much, right? Is this a way for Ilia to kind of just be like, all right, we need to get the ball rolling here. I want to fight again here in the UFC. But if not, I'm going to start talking crazy and say I want to box Bud Crawford. Fighters dare to be great. He ain't beating Bud Crawford, dog. But again, what you can't honestly sit up here and tell me that, hey, man, I wouldn't be intrigued to see this. Of course you would. Anyone representing MMA, especially someone that has really good boxing like Ilia, it would still be fun, but at the end of the day, he's not beating Bud Crawford. He's just not. He's not. Right? So the bottom line is the UFC needs to get this guy active. We need to get him fighting. This is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And that's what this boils down to for me. Right? And don't do this because this is a guy in Ilia Topuria who, maybe he could cross over and box at some point, but I want to see Ilia defend the belt and actually put in some work here as the champion in the UFC, right? He beat Volkanovski, which is incredibly impressive. Defended once against Holloway, moved up, knocked out Oliveira for a vacant title, and now we're talking about crossing over into boxing. Just trying to follow the McGregor playbook, I guess. It's just ridiculous to me, man. It's ridiculous. I want to see this guy active. I want to see him fighting. The UFC needs to get this figured out because it's ridiculous. It is. And maybe this is boredom, right? Like I said, it could be multiple different things. It's kind of how I'm looking at it. But the bottom line is we can't have this. Because Ilia Topuria was a guy who's in the prime of his career talking about, I don't know if I'm going to be around that long. I don't know. Well, I can guarantee you this, or in my opinion at least, if you give Ilia Topuria a boxing match against Bud Crawford where he presumably would make a ridiculous amount of money, probably more than he's made in his entire career for sure, in one boxing bout, what makes you think he's coming back to the UFC, dog? What makes you think? Sure, it'd be good for Ilia Topuria, but in terms of the fans and the UFC, I don't think Dana's letting this happen, but the bottom line is we need to get this guy active. And maybe this is, like I said, boiled over frustration. He wants to get the ball rolling here. Just like I said, sacrifice Gaethje if that's what we need to do. Get the guy in there in December. Get him in there early next year. Like I said, it should be Arman Sarukian. We've heard the UFC say that that's probably not the route they're going. They're holding the weight miss or pull out, whatever it was again, where Arman was supposed to fight Islam. Just do something. Get this guy active, man. I'm tired of the UFC sitting around. The guy literally KO'd somebody at UFC 317, took almost no damage whatsoever. He should be ready to fight. Let's get it going. Right? And just shut this down. Shut it down. Like I said, intriguing, sure. It ain't happening. Just stop. I want to see Ilia Topuria defend the belt, do some more things in the UFC, because for a guy that's been saying he don't want to be around real long, you give him a boxing match against Bud Crawford, he makes a bunch of money. What makes you think that he is coming back, at least in my eyes, man? He's a super fun fighter. I want to see him back in there. Let's get the activity rolling, because people, like I said, that criticize Islam Makhachev, Islam is more active. Right? So, it's just crazy what's going on in the MMA world right now, man, where people are saying these guys are inactive. They're inactive, but people don't want to talk about Ilia Topuria. Next, what does the UFC do next at 145 pounds? Because Movsar Evloev was supposed to fight Aaron Pico. We all know that back on that. I think it was the Fight Night Abu Dhabi card, and I was really looking forward to seeing Movsar Evloev compete again. Now, granted, I didn't want him to fight Aaron Pico because he is clearly the guy that should be fighting for the title next against Alexander Volkanovski. Now, the issue is he essentially pulled out of a fight against Aaron Pico to where I could see the UFC holding that against him because the UFC is looking for any possible reason to hold something against Movsar. They are, and they have their reason. He pulled out of a fight against Aaron Pico, and they're like, well, Lerone Murphy stepped in on short notice, fought Pico in a co-main event, and got a spectacular knockout. What have you done, Movsar, since you've been in the UFC? And now, granted, Movsar actually has some really good wins on his resume. Against Aljamain Sterling, against Arnold Allen. He beat Diego Lopez in his debut in the UFC, right? So he's got some great wins. But the bottom line is Lerone Murphy came out, and got an impressive KO against Aaron Pico. So I just don't see the UFC giving Movsar that next title shot. He should. I've wanted to see Volkanovski versus Movsar. I feel like the entire MMA fan base basically does, right? We want to see Volkanovski fight guys in their prime. Now, to be fair, Lerone Murphy has kind of earned a title shot. He has stepped in on short notice, and why would he necessarily step in on short notice, risk his ranking against a guy who has not had a fight in the UFC, didn't deserve to fight a top guy, as none of these PFL guys that are coming over deserve that kind of opportunity right away. Lerone gave him the opportunity, took the risk, got the KO, and he's calling for a title fight, and he absolutely deserves it. But the problem is, I feel like we all want to see Movsar versus Volkanovski. So that's the fight I would like to see in December, but I don't know that we're going to get that. I don't think we do. I think that the UFC is going to do Lerone Murphy versus Volkanovski, and I could see Movsar Evloev versus Diego Lopez too, right? Because Diego's coming off of that violent finish over Jean Silva, right? He lost to Volkanovski, but outside of losing to Volk, how good has Diego been, man? Right? So I could see them running that back, and Movsar Evloev, right? Congrats, Diego Lopez. Let's do the rematch, or maybe I can fight Lerone Murphy. It doesn't matter. Any of these two guys. Anytime, anywhere, any place. That's what Movsar's saying. He's willing to fight anybody, man. Got to respect it. So I'd love to see him fight Volkanovski. That's the fight that I would book, but I don't think the UFC's going to do that. They're looking for any reason, man, against Movsar. We know that. We know this. So I can see the UFC doing Volkanovski versus Lerone Murphy, which, by the way, Lerone has earned a title shot, though. I don't think, given the wins that Movsar has had and the incredible streak, he's undefeated, all those variables. But Lerone Murphy, by taking the risk, doing what he has done, he's put in some nice work. He has. So you can't sit here and say Lerone doesn't deserve it, because he does. But Movsar, in my opinion, deserves it more. So on a crazy win streak, man. And stylistically, we want to see Alexander Volkanovski take out these tough challenges. We want to see him go in there against a Movsar Evloev, because I think that's a hard fight for both guys. Stylistically, Evloev is troubling for Volkanovski, and stylistically, Volk is very troubling for Evloev. We want to see fresh fights. So Evloev, Murphy, one of those guys is probably the next fight for Volkanovski. And like I said, Movsar versus Diego too, I can very much see that happening. Very much can. Maybe we get Diego versus Yair. Maybe they do, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think below. But I would love to see Movsar versus Volk, but I just think they're going to do Lerone versus Volkanovski next. Then we probably get Movsar either waiting in the wings again, right? Or we get Diego Lopez versus Yair because there's beef there. But I could very much see Diego versus Movsar, winner gets a title shot. But like I said, I think it should be Movsar. That's the fight I think the fans want to see against Volkanovski. Last but not least, the UFC ranking system is an absolute joke. I made a video not that long ago in one of these, news reaction videos to where I was talking about this, and it was like, Max Holloway's like, I'm done at featherweight. I'm at lightweight. Ilia Topuria vacated, and they still had these guys in the featherweight rankings. Right, so I just don't even know what the hell's going on. And then the number placements don't even make any sense, right, for a lot of the divisions. But let me tell you this right now. This has got to be one of the stupidest things I've ever seen when it comes to the UFC. We have Ante Delia, who makes his UFC debut, goes in there and knocks out Marcin Tybura like I predicted him to get that finish. And so he finishes Marcin Tybura. So doesn't that mean that he should be ahead of Tybura because he beat him? No. The new UFC ranking system says we don't care about that. Marcin Tybura is going to move up a spot to number 9, and Delia is going to now be ranked at 10 behind him. How are you going to be ranked behind the guy that you beat? Easily. Dominated. Finished. How is Delia behind Marcin Tybura, man? I know that this is like a simple kind of stupid thing, But it's the bottom line of how dumb the ranking systems are. And I said this before. I called this out a long time ago about the rankings. It's a way for the UFC to kind of finagle some of these guys into the rankings because they know that a lot of the fans care about the number next to the fighter. That's how they're like, oh, well, this guy shouldn't get a title shot because he's ranked number 8. But if they make him number 4, now it doesn't look so bad. To me, that's kind of the way that the UFC is kind of looking at this, to be able to justify handing out certain title shots. Maybe I'm wrong. But at the end of the day, this is absolutely stupid. How in the world do you dominate somebody, finish them in, I believe it was the first round, right? And you're going to be ranked behind them in the rankings. Makes absolutely no sense. Absolutely no sense. The UFC ranking system, it is an absolute joke. I'm sure we can all agree. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please let me know what you think down in the comments. Give this video a like. And if you could subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate it. See you next time.